Hey guys, what do y'all say we go ahead and jump on to chapter number 7? Now, Jonas's group had taken new place in the auditorium, trading places with the 11s, so that they sat in the very front immediately before the stage. They are arranged by their original numbers, the numbers that they had been given at birth. The numbers were rarely used after the naming, but each child knew his number, of course, and some parents used them in irritation at the child's misbehavior, indicating that mischief made one unworthy of a name. Jonas always chuckled when he heard his parent exasperate and call sharply a whining toddler, "That's enough, 23." Jonas was 19. He had been the 19th new child born his year. It meant at his naming, he had already been standing and bright eyed, soon to walk and talk. It had been given him a slight advantage the first year or two, a little more maturity than many of his other group mates who had been born later months of that year. But it evened out, as it always did, by 3. After 3, the children progressed as much the same level, though by their first number, one could always tell who was a few months older than the other group. Technically, Jonas's full number was 1119, since there were other 19s, of course, in each age group. And today, now that the new 11s had advanced in the morning, there were now two 1119s. At the midday break, he had exchanged smiles with a new one, a shy female named Harriet. But the duplication was only for those few hours. Very soon, he would not be an 11, but a 12, and age would no longer matter. He would be an adult like his parents, though a new one and untrained still. Asher was 4, and he sat down in a row ahead of Jonas. He would receive his assignment fourth. Fiona, 18, was on his left. On his other side, at 20, a male named Pierre, whom Jonas didn't like much. Pierre was very serious, not much fun, and a warrior, and tattletale too. "Have you checked the rules, Jonas?" Pierre was always whispering solemnly. "I'm not sure that's within the rules. Usually it's some foolish thing that no one cared about, like opening his tunic if it was the day with the breeze, taking a brief try on a friend's bicycle just to experience a different feel." The initial speech of the ceremony of 12 was made by the chief elder, the leader of the community, who was elected every 10 years. The speech was much the same each year, a recollection of the time of childhood and the period of preparation, the coming of responsibilities of adult life, the profound importance of an assignment, the seriousness of training to come. Then the chief elder moved ahead in her speech. "This is the time," she began, looking directly at them, "when we acknowledge differences. You 11s have spent all 4 of your years till now learning to fit in, to standardize your behavior, to curb any impulse that might set you apart from the group. But today, we honor your differences. They have determined your futures." She began to describe this year's group in a variety of personalities. Though she singled no one out by name, she mentioned that there was one who had a singular skills at caretaking, another who loved new children, one with unusual scientific aptitude, and a fourth for whom physical labor was an obvious pleasure. Jonas shifted in his seat, trying to recognize each reference of the group mates. The caretaking skills were no doubt those of Fiona. On his left, he remembered noticing her tenderness in which she had bathed the old. Probably the one with the scientific aptitude was Benjamin, the male who had devised new and important equipment for rehabilitation center. He had heard nothing that he had recognized him as himself, Jonas. Finally, the chief elder paid tribute to the hard work of her committee, which had performed the observations so meticulously all year. The committee of elders stood and was acknowledged by applause. Jonas noticed Asher yawn slightly, covering his mouth politely with his hand. Kind of like what I just did. Excuse me. Then at last, the chief elder called number 1 to the stage, and the assignments began. Each announcement was lengthy, accompanied by a speech directed at a new 12. Jonas tried to pay attention as one smiling happily received her assignment as fish hatchery attendant, along with the words of praise for her childhood spent doing many volunteer hours there, and her obvious interest in the important process of providing nourishment for the community. Number one, her name was Madeline, returned finally amidst applause to her seat, wearing a new badge that designated her as a fish hatchery attendant. Jonas was certainly glad that that assignment was taken. He wouldn't have wanted it, but he gave Madeline a smile of congratulation. When two, a female named Inger received her assignment as birth mother, Jonas remembered that her mother had called it a job without honor, but he thought that the committee had chosen well. Inger was a nice girl, though somewhat lazy. Sorry, guys, lost my spot. Oh, there we are. Though somewhat lazy, and her body was strong. She would enjoy 3 years of being pampered that would follow her brief training. She would give birth easily and well, and the task of laborer that would follow would use her strength, keep her healthy, and impose self discipline. Inger was smiling when she resumed her seat. Birth mother was an important job if lacking in prestige. Jonas noticed that Asher looked nervous. He kept turning his head and looking back at Jonas until the group leader had given him a silent chastisement, a motion to sit still and face forward. 3. Isaac was given the assignment of instructor of sixes, which obviously pleased him. He is well deserved. Now there are 3 assignments gone, and none of the ones that Jonas would have liked. But that's not that he could have been a birth mother, anyways, he realized with amusement. He tried to sort through the list in his mind, if possible, assignments that remained, but there's so many that he gave up. And anyways, now it was Asher's turn. He paid strict attention as his friend went to the stage and stood self-consciously beside the chief elder. All of us in our community know and enjoy Asher, the chief elder began. Asher grinned and scratched one leg with his other foot, and the audience chuckled softly. When the committee began to consider Asher's assignment, she went on, there are some possibilities that were immediately discarded, some that would clearly not have been right for Asher. For example, she said, smiling, we did not consider for an instant designating Asher as an instructor of threes. The audience now howled at laughter, and Asher laughed too, looking sheepish, but pleased with the special attention. The instructors of 3 were in charge of acquisition of correct language. In fact, the chief elder continued, chuckling a little to herself, we even gave a little thought to some retroactive chastisement for the one who had been Asher's instructor of 3 so long ago. At the meeting where Asher was discussed, we were told many of the stories that we all remembered from his days of language acquisition. Especially, she said, chuckling, the difference between snack and smack. Remember that, Asher? Asher nodded ruefully, and the audience laughed out loud. Jonas did too, actually. Excuse me. He remembered, though, that he had only been a 3 at the time himself. The punishment used for small children was a regulated system of smacks with a discipline wand, a thin, flexible weapon that stung painfully when it was wielded. The child care specialists were trained very carefully in the discipline methods. A quick smack across the hands for a bit of minor misbehavior, 3 sharper smacks on bare legs for a second offense. Poor Asher, who always talked too fast and mixed up words even as a toddler. As a 3 eager for his juice and crackers and snack time, one day he said smack instead of snack as he stood waiting in line for morning treat. Jonas remembered it clearly. He could still see little Asher wiggling with impatience in the line. He remembered the cheerful voice call out, I want my smack. The other 3s, including Jonas, laughed nervously. Snack, they corrected. You meant snack, Asher. But the mistake had been made, and precision of language was one of the most important tasks of small children. Asher had asked for a smack. The discipline wand in the hand of the child care worker whistled as it came across Asher's hands, and Asher whimpered, cringed, and corrected himself instantly. Snack, he whispered. But the next morning he had done it again, and again the following week. He just couldn't seem to stop, though for each last discipline, the wand came down again, escalating to a series of painful lashes that left marks on Asher's legs, and eventually, for a period of time, Asher just stopped talking altogether when he was 3. For a while, the chief elder said, relating the story, we had a silent Asher, but we learned. She turned to him with a smile. When he began to talk again, it was with greater precision, and now his lapses are very few. His corrections and apologies are very prompt, and his good humor is unfailing. The audience murmured in agreement. Asher's cheerful disposition was well known throughout the community. Asher, she lifted her voice to make the official announcement, we have given you assignment of Assistant Director of Recreation. She clipped on his new badge and stood beside her, beaming. Then he turned and left the stage with the audience cheering. When he made it to his seat again, the chief elder looked down at him and said the words that she now said 4 times and would say to each new 12. Somehow she gave a special meaning for each of them. Asher, she said, thank you for your childhood. The assignments continued, and Jonas watched and listened, relieved now by the wonderful assignment his best friend had been given, but he was more and more apprehensive as his own approached. And now the new 12s in the row ahead all had received their badges, and they were fingering them as they sat, and Jonas knew that each one of them was thinking about the training that lay ahead. For some, one studious male who had been selected as doctor, a female as engineer, another for law and justice, it'd be years of hard work and study. Others, like laborers and birth mothers, would have much shorter training periods. At 18, Fiona on his left was called. Jonas knew she must be nervous, but Fiona was a calm female. She had been sitting quietly, serenely throughout the ceremony. Even the applause, through enthusiastic, seemed serene when Fiona was given the important assignment of caretaker of the old. It was perfect for such a sensitive, gentle girl, and her smile was satisfied and pleased when she took her seat beside him again. Jonas prepared himself to walk to the stage. When the applause ended, the chief elder picked up the next folder and looked down at the group to call forward the next new 12. He was calm now that it was his turn had come. He took a deep breath and he soothed his hair with his hand. 20, he heard her voice say clearly. Pierre. She skipped me, Jonas thought, stunned. Had he heard wrong? No. There was a sudden hush in the crowd, and he knew that the entire community realized that the chief elder had moved from 18 to 20, leaving a gap. On his right, Pierre, with startled look, rose from his seat, moved to the stage. A mistake. She made a mistake. But Jonas knew, even as he thought it, that she hadn't. The chief elder made no mistakes, not at the ceremony of 12. He felt dizzy, and he couldn't focus his attention. He didn't want to hear the assignment Pierre received, and was only dimly aware of the applause as the boy returned, wearing his new badge. Then 21, 22. The numbers continued in order, and Jonas sat dazed as they moved to the 30s and the 40s. Nearing the end, each time at the announcement, his heart jumped for a moment. He thought wild thoughts. Perhaps now she would call his name. Could he have forgotten his own number? No. He had always been 19. He was sitting in the seat marked 19, but she had skipped him. He saw the others in his group glance at him, embarrassed, and then he averted his eyes quickly. He was worried to look on his face at the group leader. He hunched his shoulders and tried to make himself smaller in his seat. He wanted to disappear, to fade, not to exist. He didn't dare turn and find his parents in the crowd. He couldn't bear to see their faces darkened with shame. Jonas bowed his head and he searched through his mind. What had he done wrong? All right, guys. What do y'all say we look at the chapter 7 questions, huh? Let me get my little fancy folder out here. Chapter 7 questions. What was Jonas's number and how are they assigned? What was Jonas's number and how are they assigned? Number 2. What was Asher's assignment? What did his best friend get, his assignment? What was his job? And then on page 56 are the words, thank you for your childhood. Explain what that means. What does that mean? All right, guys. Thank you for following along with me. I look forward to seeing you next time.